So let's get to the deeper end of this one-page report from your organization in terms of what the incoming administration should do. And I'm going to read this line very quickly. It says, the crisis could also increase some investor uncertainty as the new government takes office, leading to a Naira-denominated assets sell-off. That's one of them. But more importantly, that there is the crisis. Another crisis is in the offing in the absence of an effective strategy to deregulate NNPC and or complete the reform of the controversial fuel subsidy with that. Put all of that together. Talk to us.
Okay, good. What we're saying here is that we sense that, first of all, we're generating a lot of uncertainty because at the moment, the fact that the fuel scarcity has actually continued is making investors to feel a bit uncomfortable regarding what exactly is the direction of the new government regarding the deregulation of the sector. I mean, it's quite clear right now that everybody's calling for it, and it needs to be the next thing that's to be done. The fuel sector, the gasoline sector needs to be fully deregulated. Of course, it will have some short-term negative impact. Of course, prices will go up. It may be exactly like what we see in the diesel market, where on the PPRA website, for instance, diesel price should be somewhere around 135, 137. But I'm not sure of any at the pumps. I'm not sure there's anybody that sells at that price exactly. So we might see exactly the same scenario where even though the official price may be somewhere around 136, may go up to about 200, but the fact is there needs to be a clear policy direction.
Are there expectations, or are expectations very high, that the new president should have spoken, make some statements, remarkable statements that folks can hold on to, both investors, oil marketers, traders, everyone, research analysts, business people, with regards to the oil sector? Do you think this statement hasn't come out loud and clear in just a...
Perhaps so, yes, because there has been some statements, and I think I called just about last week or so, there was a statement also by the president-elect then that they were going to develop a system where NNPC, or rather the government, will take the responsibility of actually exporting whatever crude cannot be refined locally, bringing back the products into the country and then distributing to the marketers. But again, that still doesn't provide enough clarity, because that seems to be, will that be driven by NNPC? Will there be allocation of the crude to various marketers to help with the transportation? Who would decide the pricing of the product that is brought back? Exactly, it seems to still run on the same structure that we have on ground, which also means that, first of all, will the government develop depots? Will the government develop storage facilities to receive the products, or will it still be the storage facility of the various marketers that will receive the products? There's still some clarity that's not so sure. This is a system that has been used in the past. I mean, under Buhari's previous regime, he used that system, but how would it work now where, for instance, our consumption is a lot larger? We're talking about a significant difference in terms of what needs to be shipped back, you know? So there are still discussions around that isn't quite clear yet, you know, that we're sensing, and that's what we think generates a bit of uncertainty. But uncertainty is just one part of it. The next part is on the economy as a whole. And we're trying to understand also, too, that don't forget, this is a product that is imported in dollars, but is sold in Naira. So there's significant exchange rate issues also here too, and that's why if you listen to most of the people that have spoken about it, it's something that if subsidy as a situation is actually resolved, it gives the Naira back a lot of power, because first of all, there's significant, there's some clarity regarding how people will go about importing. That gives a fix on the amount of dollars that's requested for that sector. And then, I mean, it just strengthens the entire sector if that process is done.
I'll go back to a business perspective to this and governance perspective to it. You need to hand over something. Now, where we are right now, does it reveal something? That clearly there's a bit of a gap or lack of connect, as it were, between the outgone JAG's administration and Buhari's incoming administration as to how it should be resolved. Was there a bridge, or was there a lacuna in terms of what was handed over, in terms of specifics of how this should be resolved? Because it's beginning to look like there's a missing link here. I
mean, there might be, but you see, again, what I sense also too could be that the government, the new regime, is trying to take its time to consider various options and decide on what might be the best approach to take.
Because, wasn't that part of what the transition ought to have done? We had elections on the 28th of March, and
we had a long period.
So we've had 60 days.
At least,
minimum, in between, in which the outgone administration of President Jonathan ought to have had very serious discussions and action plans that right now people are expecting the Buhari's administration to have started talking about, perhaps implementing?
I think there were some plans. I think there were some plans, and you can't take that away. There were some plans, but the fact is this. Some issues perhaps have been prioritized, and you can see, again, by the way the new president is heading to Chad, Niger, to, first of all, tackle the issue of security, and also the issue of the Boko Haram in the north. And also, clearly, we've not seen any indication on how his cabinet will be composed, so to even know who will be the Minister of Petroleum, so there may be a sort of a pause, just trying to decide on the best way to approach this.
Insecurity and insurgents is very, very important. Lives are involved, businesses are involved. You need to tackle that. However, what would Nigerians would have loved to see solved first?
I imagine it's the power crisis, the fuel crisis,
the
energy crisis. Because don't forget, this is happening also with the power crisis at the same time, because we don't have fuel for the generators.
One flows into
and
the
exactly, and it's a general energy crisis because we don't have the fuel and we don't even have the power. So how do you move forward as a business? And that's really what the issue is.
From what we gathered from newspaper reports and things like that, the new president meeting with the service chiefs and whatever, would you as an analyst perhaps say you would have won those meetings to be with the NNPC, with the Minister of Petroleum Resources, perhaps the PAMSECs and the directors in the NPDC and PPRA and what have you?
I think what would have been nice would have been to immediately see an action plan read out to show that, okay, this is what we want to do about the situation, and this is the person that will handle or that will drive that process, which could be in form of either the MD of NNPC or somebody who is currently acting in that capacity, or this is going to be the person who's going to head the special committee or the head of the committee currently investigating the subsidy claims and all that. There should have been a clear action plan that is made public that this is how we're going to address this issue, so that as we tackle the issue of insecurity, we're also tackling the issue of energy crisis at the same time. But that, I think, lack of communication clearly right now creates a bit of uncertainty. And of course, investors are taking action. You can see what's happening in the equity markets. You can see what's happening in various other markets as well. And that's what.
How much longer, therefore, do you think this lingering could linger before things started to bottom out once again?
I think if by the end of this week we don't see any clear directive regarding that, marketers are likely to, and then we don't also see some monies paid, because don't forget, no money has actually been paid yet, even as we speak. And so some of the marketers are still...
Was there any money paid on May 25th?
No. No cash went out. What was agreed was that...
It was a gentleman's agreement.
Exactly.
More like
it was a gentleman's agreement that we will pay you. We will ensure that your claims are investigated and we will pay you. And to the extent that was made public, that was what we saw. So clearly, no cash was paid. And even up to now as we speak, some of the marketers will tell you they haven't received any new cash yet. So the fact is this, the marketers are still holding out that what will Buhari do? But you have to also remember that we're still facing a bit of a revenue crisis. If you look at what's happening on the oil side, on the upstream side of the market, we're not really selling our crude as well. And we're having cargoes that are staying over and over in the market, not getting new buyers. We've had the Indian Minister of Petroleum come over to come and initiate discussions about buying directly because they're tired of buying through middlemen. But at the moment, what we're seeing is a major revenue crisis also in the sense that our cargoes are still staying on the market. We have May cargoes that were released in April still on the market. We have June cargoes already on the market. And in the next 2 weeks, we'll be releasing July cargoes. And it's still not moving yet. What that means is that even if they do clear the market at some point, the revenue payments or the payments will delay, and then, it affects government's ability to meet its expenses as at when due. So that's what we're saying. So government itself is in a tight position, but needs to handle these guys, or at least give them some comfort by saying, okay, you know what, we can pay half of what we owe you currently, or we can pay this portion of what we owe you currently, and we'll move the payments forward.
Let's try to read the minds of the presidents here. Perhaps between now and Friday, President Buhari goes on television and he says, dear Nigerians, we've decided to remove petrol subsidy and we are paying XY amount to petrol importers. At what price do you think the hoarded petrol products will go out to you and I, 160 million Nigerians?
What do you think that's somewhere around 200 naira?
That's your expectation?
That's my expectation. Because the official price will be somewhere around, currently based on calculation, it's about 136 naira per litre. And then if you put in all the other various payments that the marketers actually, and that's part of the problem we have to pay before their trucks can actually leave the various depots, or they have to pay before their trucks can move from point A to point B to various officials, various people, it will be somewhere around 200 naira.
But do you think this is a very difficult decision for President Buhari to take?
I think it may be because for a lot of Nigerians, subsidy represents an opportunity to benefit from the government directly. It enables them to actually get fuel at a price that is actually quite low and affordable. But then again, people have paid higher amounts than that in recent weeks, and they found it comfortable to do that. It's likely that they won't mind if the price actually rises, but the fuel is available.
So on a final note, on a bigger picture, where does this place us within the African space when you talk about crude oil production, petrol import, consumption, subsidy, pricing at the pumps, and getting the economy back on track, so that we don't miss some of the estimates of our GDP still somewhere around 4%?
Exactly. Because
but there are some speculations that we could actually do zero if we're not careful in terms of GDP.
I mean, the way we're going, we sense that we may see GDP drop significantly again in Q2, perhaps. And don't forget, it's a significant drop. Any 1% drop in your GDP is quite significant. For a $510 billion or $511 billion economy, a 2% drop is roughly about $10 billion. So that is quite significant because, again, that's
was that what was suffered in first quarter?
That was
something like that.
In first quarter. So you can imagine a further 2% drop. It's quite a significant figure. And I mean, if we sustain the energy crisis as it is, and businesses continue to shrink because of reduced purchasing power of people, reduced purchases generally, and then you can see from the PMI figures as well, manufacturing capacity also drops because there isn't adequate power supply and all that. We could see the GDP shrink perhaps below 3%, and that would put us in quite a bad state because relative to a lot of African countries who are still pushing about, although as a region, Sub-Saharan Africa is expected to do 4.5% in 2015, so it puts us below the average, which isn't too good.
So if President Buhari puts the hot knife through the butter, as it were, just slice it into two, and we go full deregulation, then we also pay some petrol marketers, then we have about 200 naira per liter. Do you think this will grow our second quarter GDP in any way?
I think it's a little too late because we're already in June. Q2 ends by the end of June.
It's sounding like bad news, all right?
It's a little too late. We've had this scarcity since the beginning of this quarter. So businesses have actually been affected in one way or the other. So whichever way we slice this dice, or whichever we slice
we throw the dice?
We throw the dice. It's still going to affect Q2 GDP.
So most likely, first half of 2015
won't be a very rosy picture.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Here. Not a very nice way to end the conversation, but
great to be here.
We've got to have it that way. Thank you very much. Dolapo Oni, energy analyst at EcoBank Research.